Welcome back to High Noon Live on LinkedIn. So we're still waiting for your questions. Feel free to pop them in the chat. And I promised before the break that I'd speak to Nikki about how I speak to my grandchildren. So Nikki, my eldest grandson Max is 4.5 and my youngest Alex is 2. And it's interesting watching their behaviors and just seeing how the languaging can shift their emotional state. So the 4.5-year-old is a very sharp, I would imagine he's a type 1 on the Enneagram. We don't like to box people, but his whole need for perfection, his whole kind of sensitivity, energy field feels like a Enneagram type 1. And I noticed myself the other day, and it wasn't planned, but he was really about to have a tantrum. We were playing with dinosaurs and they were falling off the table, and his 2-year-old brother was knocking them. He's a bit of a brute. So I could just see his level of frustration. And I said, Max, do you want this anger to stay with you, or do you just want to breathe it out and let it go? And you watch the eye language of a 4-year-old. And he actually paused, and I said, you can just breathe it out. And he looked at me and he came and gave me a hug. There was no other discussion around it because he doesn't have the linguistics to do so. But I thought if we start changing the way we speak to our youngsters, it really can change us hanging on to our beliefs. Now, what I do know is that in this gorgeous book, Embrace Your Elegant Power, is this, I love your titles of your chapters. They make me want to go, okay, what is that all about? So the 3rd chapter, Unshackling from the Shoulds. So tell me more about that. I mean, how as adults can we unshackle from the shoulds?
Well, it's interesting that you speak about a 4-year-old, because that's often where the shoulds, all of that conditioning, the expectations that we've created for ourselves or we think others have created for us, it actually creeps in from a very young age. It's almost like those stories that get told to us around the things we should do. And I often say to people, just even pay attention. How many times do you say should during the course of a day? And it often alarms a number of people because it creeps into the language. And as you mentioned, how we talk to youngsters matters, but how we talk to ourselves matters just as much. It's so important to really start to own those stories that we're telling ourselves, to be aware of them and question whether or not they still serve us, because many of them no longer do. But we're still hanging on to something behind that. And I often used to joke that, I used to say I could introduce myself as, hello, I'm Nikki Robotham, I'm a workaholic, because I spent my life chasing those gold stars of everyone else's validation outside of myself, when actually the only validation I needed was within. If I changed the stories and the picture around how success looked for me. It's radically different now to what it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Exactly. And I've seen that transformation in you, which has been quite superb over more than four or 5 years. Brilliant. Similarly, as a workaholic, a fellow workaholic, is that I find that really old saying, Nikki, of, speak to yourself like you would to your best friend, is I find that self-talk works. So I go, okay, Joni, you know what, you're entitled to a day off today. It's a work day, but you're entitled to a duvet day, a reading day, a massage day, a sitting on the grass and soaking up the sun day, doing nothing day, watching the clouds day, whatever. And I would say that to a good friend. But I am very self-judgmental. And when we look at the 8 competencies of emotional intelligence, one of them is empathy. And we always think of empathy and compassion as being interpersonally. But actually, one of the EQ competencies is me empathy, me compassion. So unshackling those shoulds in your own language, but towards yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I think for so long also we thought that we would become enough once we've done something, once we've strived, achieved, gotten to a certain point. And so that's why I always bring people back to the present. And I've actually got it written on my bathroom mirror in lipstick. It says, I am enough now.
Lovely.
Not I'm enough when I do this, not when I become happy because of this. I'm enough now. And often I use that as a way to stop that cycle. Again, hand on heart, I'm enough now. No explanation, no more required. And I think if we start to say that to ourselves and really own that from a place of self-love and self-worth, that's where the game changes. That's where we can really create that foundation with that resilience and energy that's intentional to be able to show up for ourselves and others.
And I love the fact that actually when we start doing that, I am enough, and you're intentional and you understand your own energy, you actually can be quite observant as to the energy you have between people. So one of the practical things I do is I'll facilitate a workshop, and then I'll arrive home at night still worrying about the conflict in that team, or the fact that it's two teams merged and the value systems are different, or whatever the scenario is. But my intentional, my power, my elegant power is to, as I open my front door, my hand on that handle is to be present and to go, right, I'm going to walk through my front door, breathe. I'm very fortunate to have two gorgeous spaniels and a little Yorkie, and they're there to greet, the tails are wagging, and immediately that, I have fun with them. But I'm intentional about the different energy of, the complex energy of work, and then freeing that up for some playfulness at home. And having those triggers. So if you don't have dogs, just that hand on handle.
Absolutely.
But it's really important to just start doing these things on a daily basis. But if you understanding how to be where your feet are, it's a whole lot easier, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's why I start my day off. I often go into the garden with no shoes on and just ground into the earth and feel that
Even
earth.
in winter.
Even in winter.
Are you
Everyone
brave?
thinks that it's... But as I said to someone, I said, I actually know what the earth feels like now.
Yes.
I said, I can tell you how cold it is, and I can tell you that it's relatively warmer today.
Yes.
And another way in the evenings, and I just practice gratitude when I'm doing that as well.
Yes.
Just thank you for my health, for a good night's sleep, for what I have to look forward to today. It's again bringing you into that moment. And in the evenings, I love to just take a shower or a salt bath and almost just use it to also wash off that energy.
Exactly.
Because you've shifted it, but it's also releasing anything that's kind of still sitting there. Because we sometimes still have something playing at the back. And so it's another great way just to kind of let all of that go and move through it.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for the 2 books that you've written, and they'll be in the show notes. 7 Steps to Finding Flow, one of my favorite books on my bookshelf, seriously, because it's so practical.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to indulge in Embrace Your Elegant Power. So I think we should have another show. We only touched the tip of the iceberg, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I'd love to be back.
Great.